to Dip In and Out with Lucy, the podcast that opens up the discussion around domestic abuse. I'm very fortunate on this Monday morning to be sitting down with Lorraine Marshall. Lorraine is a survivor of narcissistic abuse and is also the author of What Type of Man, amongst many, many other things, advocate, etc. So Lorraine, good morning.
Hello, Lucy. Thank you for having me on your podcast. Lucy.
Very, very welcome. And would you just explain a bit more about what you do and why you do what you do?
Well, at the moment, what I'm doing is I am podcasting myself, obviously, every week. I release a podcast. I have multiple platforms on social media to write articles. I do videos and basically LinkedIn. But what I'm doing is trying to raise awareness of a situation which is post-separation abuse and narcissistic abuse. And basically, the whole thing of abuse is all about power and control. And so what I've been doing in the last 4 years is healing from the trauma that I have still got probably and trying to uncover everything that's happened and then write about it. I've documented about it, and I'm just basically in a space of trying to work out what can I do next, and like where do I go next, because I haven't had really a chance to actually have any type of life because of the situation I've been in over 4 years.
Yeah.
And basically it all started back in 2020, and I was looking forward to the future and believing that at last he's making a commitment and we're going to be together in our retirement. And he said we're going to be secure because he told me he just put 100,000 away in his pension, and he had his other house in the UK, and this is a board paid for house. And so I had my house in the UK as well, and I'm all thinking everything's lovely and secure, and we're going to be together. And a strange thing happened. It was June of 2020. I'd been out for an art class, and I came back in, and he mustn't have heard me come through the door. So I walked through the kitchen and I walked through the living room, and I heard him talking, and he said some strange things. And I heard him say, Lorraine is very insecure. And I was like, what? I'm insecure? Well, what? I couldn't understand why he was saying that. Because at first I was thinking, well, he's talking to one of his sons. But when I heard him saying that, I thought, well, it can't be his son. And then he said something else, which put me on red alert. And it was, he started to talk about how he'd made his wills out, how he was leaving his house in the UK to his sons, how he was going to, this was the house that he was leaving for me, the Spanish house. But that had all been sorted out in 2016. Everything had been explained to his sons and explained to me. And so I was like, hold on a minute, this is strange. I walked through into the porch where he had his iPad in front of him while he's on this call or whatever, he was whoever he's talking to. And as soon as I walked through the door, he went, Lorraine's here, I'll have to go. And it went down. And I was like, but I never said anything. When you're in a relationship where there's been any form of verbal aggression that basically shuts down conversations, then you get to a space where you don't say things because that you've been conditioned not to speak about things. And so you can't like say, well, who was that on this? Who were you just talking to then? You don't come out with it at that point because you think, best not say anything. And you walk out and away, and it goes round until you can decide on when you want to talk about it. And so that was how it started with this call. And then later, I'd plucked the courage up to say something, and we were sitting in the hot tub together, and it was a lovely evening, and we were like, had a couple of gin and tonics or whatever, and we sort of relaxing. So I did decide to pluck up the courage. And then I was told he'd found someone he knew from a long time back, and he was talking to this person through Facebook. And then the recollection that I had about what he used to talk with, oh, well, this was a girlfriend I had, this was a girlfriend I had, this was a girlfriend I had. And I remembered then that this person that he's just been supposedly speaking to was a girlfriend from the past that he'd lived with very briefly. So I still didn't sort of think anything more, and I didn't question anything about what I'd overheard about him speaking about. And so that was just like a little memory look. And then in July, the flights restriction was lifted, and then he flew out of Spain to go back to the UK. Now, it already, earlier in the year, it had planned to have a removal van, pack all the things, and then it would come out here with all our furniture, my belongings, his belongings from the house in the UK. So that got put off because of the lockdown and the restrictions of 2020. So he returned in July, and then this removal van was booked again. And then in the middle of July, he sends photographs. This van's all packed. Look, it's going to be like Christmas when I get back. All things that I've put here. And I was like, oh, that's nice, everything going along nicely. Then he was due to come back. He delayed a week. He said he was going to have a transformational coaching therapy session the weekend before he was due to arrive back and fly back.
Yeah.
And it's like, therapy session. He's never spoken anything about therapy sessions before. But anyway, he did this therapy session in the UK, and he flew back on the 25th of August. And then the next day was the 26th of August, and he wanted me all to myself. So any plans I had were dropped, and then we just sat and we spoke through all sorts of things about his transformation and all of the problems that had arisen from his childhood, the trauma he'd experienced, loads and loads of things. But at the same time, he then offered me that opportunity. He said, I could have this transformation coaching. He would be there for me. And he said, I can book flights. I'll book a hotel. I can hire a car, and I'll be there for you. We could go back and you can have this transformation coaching. And I'm blown away. I'm sitting there in this lounge and I'm thinking to myself, why?
Yeah.
Why?
Hang on a minute, why? Yeah.
And then I think I actually voiced why came out.
Yeah.
Well, he then said, so that you can have the success in business that you've always wanted. And I'm like, what? And it's so strange for him to say something like that, right? Because my experience of wanting to have any type of success in business over the time period of, say, 2014 onwards, because I was already having my own business. I'd started a business in 2005 with a previous partner.
Yeah.
And we'd started that business, me and this partner. And in 2006, the December, my partner died. And so the business was very new. I was working full time at the time. So I had to move forward with my job full time, working at the local authority, and the business that we'd started. And it was pretty new then.
Yeah.
And basically all I had done at the start of that business, didn't have a business plan, didn't even know how the business would run. We started the business with 5 houses and 2 landlords in student accommodation in the city where I was.
Yeah.
And all I'd basically done for my business plan was write on a piece of paper, double the business income in the first 3 months, double again in the next 3 months. So I was expecting the income to double and then double again within 6 months, so that it would be something more substantial, because our first income from that business with 2 properties was 500 a month.
Wow.
That was the income that we were making.
Yeah.
Then when my partner died, I was like, bit of grief, devastation, all of that. But I did continue. And eventually, when I look back, I did double the income in the first 3 months, and I did double the income again in the next 3 months. And it was like, hold on a minute.
I am successful.
Did I just do that, you know? And so from there, even with the ups and downs of business, I was doing quite well on my own with that business.
Yeah.
And I had that business until 2016, because bought the house in 2015 and decided that the house was so big and it needed someone to be here. So I remained here with looking after the house and the property and everything. And so when I sold that business in 2016, I wanted to do something else. And I'd started looking at other things in 2014. I remember going to property meetings and trainings and speaking with other people who might be mentors and stuff like that. But then it was always something that he would knock me down or be critical of something. And it was really subtle that you couldn't notice it. I just thought, well, he's just being negative. And I would continue because of my positive sort of mind frame. I would think, oh, you know, and I'd just try and continue. But eventually I got to spaces where, oh, well, maybe, oh, you know, and you put stuff on the back burner and you do like not continue with things. So that's what happened. And it wasn't until after the end of the relationship that I could look back and then say, oh, that happened then. Oh, yeah. And then that happened. Oh, and then that happened. And so I'd realized post separation that there was all of these sort of little digs, little criticisms and things that were going on in the background.
Yeah,
all
all those
the time.
downs and yeah.
And so I wrote about those things in a book, right? And because I recognised the situation by then, and the actual post-separation period after he'd come back and he'd said, I'll do all of this. It was the very next day on the 27th of August when we were entertaining some friends. And we'd had a lovely evening, food and drinks, and he'd said, come here, you know, sit on my knee and give me a kiss type of thing. We talked about planting trees outside and then future plans and everything. And so, you know, everything was seeming perfectly normal.
Yeah.
And then the guests had gone, tidied up, and then he suggests, let's have a nightcap. We can sit on the cozy seats out on the porch. So he makes the drinks, I tidy up, get my drink, I sit down on the seat. We're both sitting there, and he comes out with what I now call, his 4-sentence discard speech. That's what it was.
Wow.
And it was a shock. A massive, massive shock. I mean, I can say exactly the words that he said at that point, the 4 sentences, because the first sentence put me in a spin straight away. It was, I've got something to tell you. The first sentence, right?
Yeah.
I'd heard that sentence before.
Mm.
I'd heard that sentence back in December of 2017. When he sat me down and said, I've got something to tell you. And so all straight away, it's like, bush. I'm like, oh, what's this? Because the last time he said that sentence, he put me in a space where I stood in the middle of this room here and screamed so loud. I actually damaged my throat afterwards, right?
Yeah.
Because of what he'd said to us at that point. So here he was again saying this sentence. The next sentence that came out was, I'm in love with another woman. We can remain friends if you want to remain friends, we just can't have sex anymore.
Because that's what a relationship is all about. It's
Well,
one
like,
spot and that's it, isn't it? There's nothing else in between. No respect, trust, etc. No, a relationship's just about sex. Wow.
yeah. So
Wow.
that was 4 sentences.
Wow. Oh my God.
And then my reaction wasn't the same as the last time because I don't know, there was this intuitive thoughts that came straight in not to react,
Yeah.
not to be angry in front of him,
Yeah.
not to beg, not to plead, not to cry, no emotions. But I didn't understand why that happened. It was like divine intervention, if you like.
Yeah.
I stood up, I walked away, I came into the kitchen and I sort of put my phone down. I was angry. The anger was rising up. The anger was inside.
That just
So I
anger as well. Yeah.
pushed that down onto the glass table and my phone went up in the air and bounced onto the floor. And I was like, I picked the phone up and I'm thinking, no, no, don't break that. You need that,
Yeah.
right? I walked through to the other end of this house where my bedroom at the end. And I got into that bedroom, and as soon as I got into the bedroom, I just banged my fist into the door frame of the ensuite. And I went, you bastard, you fucking bastard. And that was how I let out
Yeah.
that anger.
Yeah. Which you have to. You have to let it out. Yeah.
And then it's like I came back out of that room. By this time, he's moved from the porch and he's sitting on the sofa. And I sat on the other sofa. So there's 2 sofas, and we both sitting. And we were up till about 4:30 a.m. I went through lots of my life experiences, and he sat and listened and he said a few things, but I kept saying, I said he was repeating mistakes of his past
Yeah.
because I know what his past has been. And even though he's meant to have gone through a transformation, I don't think that he was being very transformational.
No. No. Like you say, repeating the same patterns over and over and over again.
Exactly, repeating the same patterns, which is not what you're supposed to do if you're having a transformation. So
Exactly.
that was how the relationship ended at that point. Now, on that very night of the 27th of August, right, while I'm talking about all of my past life, because I haven't had an easy life, I've had some real sort of traumatic childhood, I've had a traumatic relationships. I mean, I just put something on LinkedIn recently where I've got my 6 things, like 6 quick things about me or something. And one of the things about me in a past relationship was I actually spent all night in a police station in an interview room because I didn't want to go home. I was too frightened to go back to my own home and stayed in the police station. And then I kept asking, did I want to press charges? Did I want to do anything? And I was like, no, no, no. And I know because I've read books now and I'm more educated, right? I know now that women who are in these power control relationships, even if there's physical violence, women won't actually report the
Yeah.
violence. And I've read, oh, what book was it again? In Control, Dangerous Relationships, How They End in Murder, Jane Monckton Smith.
Yeah.
And I was shocked at the first part of that book where she explained she's a young police officer going into a domestic situation where the woman is obviously being physically assaulted. And she's got her sergeant with her. And then they try to say, look, we'll get an ambulance, you need to go and get looked at, this, that, and the other. And this woman was, no, she didn't want to press charges or nothing. And that shocked Jane as a young police officer. It shocked me reading the book and thinking, oh man, that's why a lot of women don't want to report.
Absolutely. It's interesting because one of the things you often get asked, isn't it, when you're talking about domestic abuse as your career, if you like, as your passion, is, in terms of statistics, people will say, so what are the statistics around abuse? And the one thing I will always say is you can quote chapter and verse of statistics, but the problem is it's not a true reflection because so many people don't report. So we're never really going to know the truth because of the number of people that will not report, because they just think, well, for a million reasons they won't report, that they won't be believed, that there's the shame factor, that the perpetrator, it will just get worse if they report. Because, you know, a lot of the time somebody can report something, but you're still living with that person, or that person still has contact through the children or whatever it is. So you're going to report something that then is going to lead on to something else and may actually eventually never get anywhere because it can be dropped by, as we know, the CPS, etc. But
The
that,
judge, the court, whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so why would somebody put themselves in that situation? So the statistics are never going to be a true reflection of what's actually going on in society, and not just society in the UK, in Spain. I did an episode last week with a lady in Canada. I've got another one coming up in Texas. You know, this is the thing, it's worldwide. It's not just a problem in certain parts of the world. It's, you know, it's everywhere. And it seems, sadly, that it's very similar everywhere in terms of the legal systems, in terms of reporting, in terms of all these things. People don't do it because there's so many reasons not to. There's not enough good reasons to report. There's more, you know, reasons outweighing it to not report, and that's the sad state of affairs, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, things escalated between us, and I'm one that doesn't want, I'm not really an angry person. I mean, if I'm provoked and this is like a situation, of course, I'm going to be very angry, but not in a way that I would do anything to another person.
Yeah.
See, I've got like the foresight to think, yeah, you need to get the anger out, but it's not good to punch somebody.
No.
So.
No, but you do need to. But the sad thing is that's something that doesn't get talked about very often as well, is the victim and survivor is always portrayed in this way that they're very weak, or they're very this, or they're very that. Actually, a lot of the time, victims and survivors, they're really angry. They're really, really angry. They're really upset. They're really hurt. There's so many things going around their head. There's so many things, excuse me, that have happened to them that make them think. And my mum calls it just anger. And I love that, because there are certain types of anger where it's justified in how you feel, because you're not a robot. You know, you're a human being, and you are going to react to things. If you've put your life and soul into something and then somebody turns around and just says, sorry, that's it. But it's got in your head. And like you were saying before, they get in your head and stay there. And so you know how to not say things at a certain time and not react. And then eventually when you do say something, there's a part of you that hopes that something might change, but actually deep down, you know, it's going to be the same over and over and over again, because nothing's going to change, because the perpetrator doesn't change. The tactics might change from time to time, and they usually change as post-separation abuse starts. The tactics will change, but inevitably, like you said before, it's 100% about power and control.
Yes, and it didn't, I mean, that power and control, I hadn't realised that there was so much of it. I mean, I know that he was like more dominant, but I didn't understand the verbal angry outbursts. And I just made excuses, and a lot of women just make excuses. Well, he's had too much to drink, or like he's really frustrated, or he's got a lot of work on, or he's in so much pain because of his arthritis, and then, you know, or it's his blood sugars, he's got diabetes, oh well, his blood sugar's not right. So I was just, all of these little excuses I was keep making all of the time, which, you know, obviously now I realise that that I shouldn't have been making all these excuses, and I should have been, maybe, I don't know, it's like, I tried to think, maybe I should have just said, right, look, just leave, just go, just, you know. But the thing that happens is, when you were talking about how many women don't report, women become entrapped. And this is part of what Jane Moulton Smith was saying, because you get into the relationship, and even if you were dependent and financially secure in yourself, it's to start with, and you had your own career or whatever, you can end up dependent on that other person. And it doesn't mean that you're codependent. It could be that you've got into that relationship for a start, then you end up having children. So that means one of you are going to have to be there to look after the children. Yeah. So it's usually the woman who then gives up her career in order to do that. Well, that makes another impact on her financial status because she's not working, and so she won't have a good pension at the end.
Exactly.
She's been the child, she's been the person who's looked after the home and looked after all of the other care things in the home, and she hasn't got the financial security that the man has got. But that's totally ignored in all of the legal situations that we go through. It's totally ignored. For example, with me, when I got divorced, I did my own divorce. I didn't instruct a lawyer or anything. I thought it's pretty straightforward and simple. So I just, filled in the forms and everything, sent them off. He had a solicitor, I didn't. I didn't get any settlement. I didn't get any, what do you call it for children, where you get paid?
Oh, yeah, the maintenance.
Didn't have any of that. He wasn't working. He had been a student, getting a degree. I'd also done Open University and got my degree, and then I found a full-time job. So I was in a position where I was away from him. We were separated but not divorced, and I had ended up buying back the house that was our property, and I was living in the home, but it was in my name only now. And so we were going through the divorce. And I thought it was pretty straightforward, just nothing to sort out. And so that's why there was no maintenance payments, nothing. My children at school and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that was the divorce. The second time, I never got married. I was with a man for like 11 years, right? And like I said, we started a business together. And then he died, like really suddenly. Well, how long was it? A year? 18 months into the business, he died. And so I was left alone. But when you're not married, you've got no legal status whatsoever.
A lot of people don't realise that the cohabitation rules are very different to being married to somebody. Yeah.
Yeah. And so luckily, we had a contract on a house, and I was doing the business for student rentals at that time, and I was in full-time work. So I had two sources of income, right? And yes, you're in a situation of grief. But when I turned up to go to work, my employers realised I would be in a situation of grief. And I was told that I didn't have to work all of the hours. So they said, we give you a staged return so that you would have like a day or 2 days a week, then 3 days a week, and 4, and then get back to your normal working routine.
Build up to it, yeah.
And build up to it, right? So my employers recognised that I would be in grief because I've just lost my partner. And so I wasn't in a situation where I lost my partner, I had no income whatsoever, and I was now threatened with being made homeless. I wasn't in that situation when my partner died.
Yeah.
The third relationship, which is the last one I've written the book on, was the one where we weren't married. I didn't have my name on the property, and I wasn't working because my business was sold. I had a little bit of money in the bank, no income whatsoever. And he was expecting that within just a few weeks, I would be out of this house because he set the rules, he set the deadline.
Yeah.
In a 26-minute long verbal onslaught, which was recorded because I had the foresight to ask, can we record this meeting? And he agreed. So we sat in that room there with my mobile phone on the table so we could record what we were supposedly going to discuss like adults, right? There was no discussion because I started that meeting with saying, if you just hold on a minute, I'll open my iPad and could find the email that I've sent with the proposals that I've made. And he shut this down because he just went, wait a minute, I don't think you've understood, or maybe I haven't made myself clear, but I want to tell you what I want and what I need. And so I'm sitting there going, so I couldn't even open the email and I couldn't discuss anything. And then in the next few sentences, he said that my idea was terribly, terribly, terribly bad and it's not going to happen. And I was left thinking, I was sitting there shrinking, and I'm like, what the heck? Why is he behaving like this? I mean, I'd made an email, a financial proposal, because he'd given me his letter, his dear Lorraine letter, spell out all of the different things he was prepared to do, money-wise and stuff like that. I mean, but looking at that letter didn't help, because there was so much open-endedness. It was ridiculous. It was because he'd put, well, I know that you wanted you've to move on quickly. I've never said anything about wanting to move on quickly. He was moving on quickly, not me. I was totally in agreement. And so in this letter, it was like, well, I've realised that you've said you want to move on quickly, and so I can rent you a house, and this, that, and you can have any of the furniture out of the house, and, you know, find yourself while the house is up for sale. And I'm thinking, hold on a minute. Why does he want to rent another house when we've got this house here?
In the first place, yeah.
Which doesn't like make sense. And then how much rent would he pay and for how long? Because that wasn't stipulated either. So there was lots of open-ended things that need to be discussed. Besides, why would I want to move out when I'm already living here?
It's your home. It's your home.
Exactly. And this is what it said from the start when we moved in. Here, it was like, this is our first home together, because I had a house in the UK, which was meant to be my pension. And he had his house in the UK, which, you know, was his our financial security moving ahead. But since everything that's happened, I've actually lost my house, because I had to sell after the eviction, when my free public lawyer had said the judge will order your eviction. That was all. She kept on telling us that the judge is going to order your eviction. No help whatsoever, even though I told her about all of the different abuse and everything that had happened. And she just wrote back, I'm sorry for your experience, but this
your
is
experience. I mean, and this is with the language barrier of being in Spain as well. There's all that to contend with.
Oh yeah. I mean,
I'm sorry for
it was ridiculous.
Wow. Jeez.
I'm sorry for the experience. I said, but this is a civil court. This is this. And she was adamant this was the judge is going to just order my eviction. This is ridiculous, but the month before the court hearing in the mayor, my solicitor lawyer said I should go to social services. I need a vulnerability report, so that, because she knew I didn't have any income. In fact, by then in 2022, I had my bank account had gone overdrawn and I had nothing left. It was in the red. So she's telling me I need to go to social services. And I'm thinking, do I need to go to social services? And all of a sudden I remembered the victim office when they called me after the gender violence case had been dismissed. They said you need to get in touch with social services, and I hadn't done. And I thought, oh, well, I might just go down. Yeah. And I went into social services. You didn't need any appointment. You got like a slip of paper from the local council. So I went with this slip of paper, goes in, waits for a few minutes, and then you get a little ticket, like you're waiting at the cheese.
if only it was to buy cheese.
And so I mean, I'm going into this room with social services. So I get my phone out and I'm saying, I'm here. I need to get a vulnerability report. And it was so ridiculous. The woman had said, she was saying, no, you can't get a vulnerability report. It's the lawyer has to ask for this. And I sat there with my arms folded. I'm not leaving this office till I get an answer. I says, phone the lawyer. She told me to come here. And you get more and more angry and more re-traumatized the situation.
It's frustrating as well, isn't it? It's frustrating because you're dealing with all the emotional things. You're trying to deal with all the financial things. There's so many things going on that you do get frustrated. And when people are not listening and are not helping, what are you going to do? You're going to blow your top and just go, no one's listening to me. Will you just listen to me? Yeah.
This is what happened. So I'm sat there, and then she walks out, the social worker walks out, and she comes back in with like a guy who has wrote on these 2 yellow sticky notes in English. So he puts these down in front of us, splattered them down in front of us on this desk. So I actually kept the sticky notes, and it's got here this is the thing I've got here.
Oh yeah.
With the yellow sticky notes and the little pass that I've had to go to social services. So it says on the sticky notes, the report must be requested directly by your lawyer from the court. And then the second one says, and the court asks social services. So by the time I've read these 2 sticky notes, I'm feeling this big.
Yeah.
I walk out of this social services and I'm thinking, oh my, no wonder people who have to go through eviction end up jumping out of windows to kill themselves.
Yeah.
Because this has been reported in Spain. It's been reported a lot of times where people who have been under the threat of eviction, where they've lost their jobs, ill health, and they haven't been able to pay the rent on the mortgages, right? They've actually committed suicide on the day that the court officials have turned up, or all the court officials have turned up.
I can believe it, because what else are you going to do when you feel that threatened and backed into a corner with nowhere to turn? And very often, you know, like yourself, you're going in and you're doing all this. And as you're saying all this, which is so important for people to hear, is you're doing this on your own. You know, you're not doing it
with a foreign country in a foreign language.
Exactly.
So that's 10 times worse to try to make yourself understood. So after I've got these 2 things, I've got in touch with someone who helped me with the gender violence. It's a court translator. And he said, if there's anything that I can help you with, let me know. And so I messaged the guy, and he responded back with some voice messages. And he said, oh, you should go back to the College of Solicitors, the Bar Association. And I thought, okay. So I go back to the Bar Association, and this is like May 2022. You still have to wear masks because they hadn't told not to wear them. And they had plastic screens up in all of the official places and things. So I go back in, and I've got these 2 yellow sticky notes in my bag, and I try to talk to them, and the guy comes over and he's telling us, look, no, it's a mistake. It's a mistake. You asked for this. It's social services. You go back to social services. And I'm standing there getting more and more frustrated about everything. I get the 2 sticky notes, and I'm so angry. I get one note and I go, push on the plastic, and then the other one, push on the plastic, and the whole plastic's going like this. And the guy's and he's going, tranquila, calm down, I'm like...
Go, well, no, actually, I won't, because I'm being pushed from pillar to post and nobody's helping me. Oh my God.
They wrote on one of the sticky notes, he put mistake and put a big square around it.
Oh, that's helpful. That's perfect.
They've made a mistake.
Problem solved. Everything's going to be fixed now because you've written a mistake on that. Wow. Well done.
This is evidence. I was like, this is blinking evidence of the failures in the system. And so basically, when I wrote that book, I actually documented the first failure that happened, because I went to a lawyer, and face-to-face meeting with a lawyer. And I showed him the evidence, and I played some of the recording on the phone, and I showed him some of the emails I've already received from the ex, and what's happened, and how he'd written to his lawyer to say that he was going to force eviction now.
Yeah.
It was only, we left in September, the end of September. It was only the 5th of October when I got the letter that said, I never loved you. He'd never loved us 11 years together. I never loved you. And now he's going to order eviction. He's going through the solicitor, and I'm going to be forced out. Because he'd used intimidation and threats and control in order he thought that he would be able to control us into a situation. Well, of course, why would I want to be that? No, it's like, no, I'm not going to be controlled in this situation. And so...
And they don't like that. They don't like that when you start saying...
So the advice from the lawyer after he'd heard what happened in the recording that I have, how he had banged his hand on the table, how he'd gotten aggressive and shouted and used verbal abuse and intimidation and everything and threats. And he said, you need to file a gender violence complaint. And I sat there thinking, oh, I came to the lawyer for help. So as I'm like, I paid the lawyer €50. I stood up and I'm saying to this lawyer, can you not just write to the other solicitor? Can you not just write? So that was me appealing to this lawyer to like do something in order just to sort something out.
Yeah.
Because he knew obviously he's advising us gender violence and complaint. But if he's got that information on why he's giving us that, why couldn't he use it as leverage and do an alternative dispute resolution and negotiate? That's what I was thinking. First, this was the first failure. He'd said, did you not hear what he said? You cannot negotiate with him. You can't negotiate with him. And I was like, and in my trauma and in everything that had happened, I just had to take this guy's advice and walk out of that solicitor's office on my own again to think, well, how do I make a complaint? Where do I go and what do I do and all of this, loads and loads more questions. Instead, what he should have done is, to make it better, think, right, okay, let's do a letter to the solicitor. Let's see if we could do an alternative dispute resolution. That would have been the first step. If then nothing was moving, if then he was still adamant that he was this, that, and you're not getting anything, that's it, then I could have went, right, okay, let's do this. And that solicitor who helped us should have been the solicitor who went with me to the police station to file the complaint, because he could have been explaining in Spanish to the police officer exactly why he was giving us that advice. That's what should have happened, and it didn't. And that was the first failure. And so when I put my next book together, I am going to highlight more the failures of what happened. And then I go 1, 2, 3, and then put them down, because I'm guessing that I'm not the only person this happens to.
No, absolutely not.
Worldwide. And so basically, in order to put that out there and publish in my next book about all the different systemic failures that I've been through in this situation.
And that's the sad thing, is it is the systemic failures, and it is how they're not joined up. They don't deal with situations as they should do. They don't have all the facts, and they certainly, I think so much of the time, they just don't want to know, because they know it's opening a can of worms, and they know it's going to be quite involved and intricate, and there's going to be so many things to discuss and deliberate and all the rest, and they just don't want to know. They just want you to go away. That's really deep down what they want to happen, is just go away and take your problems with you. We're not interested. And you know, like you said, obviously there's, for so many people as well, there's that language barrier, especially if you're living abroad, and you've got all those other things to deal with on top of it. And very often if you're on your own as well, trying to deal with it all. And all of this from something that you never asked for in the first place. You know, that's to me is always the sad sort of irony of it all, is you didn't ask for any of it, and yet it's still going on and on and on. And very often people talk about post-separation abuse and how it's to do with the link with the children. You know, that's what's going to go on for a long time. But in your case, there aren't any children, there wasn't any marriage, but there's still the post-separation abuse continuing because of the financial aspect. And you learn so much along the way, don't you? And like you said before about what we learn what we will put up with and what we won't put up with anymore. And what you certainly won't put up with is being told that, you know, I'm not going to negotiate, I'm not going to do this, and you won't shrink anymore. And that's what they don't like. They want to see you shrink. They want to see you just not, you know, roll over and give up, basically. And when you don't, that's when, you know, things do get worse.
Yeah, exactly. That's all.
I think it's amazing. I think it's incredible what you're doing. I think it's amazing that you've written about it to start with. And as you say, if you're highlighting the failures within the systems, So many people will be able to relate to that, and they will be able to relate because there's so many people involved.
One of the things that I think is important that I did actually highlight in the first book was the how the UK, well, it's not even the UK, England and Wales do not recognize cohabiting relationships. Because while I was actually, just before I was publishing the book, and I know that there was the debate that went on in the UK with the equality, women's equality in the government. They were talking again, and I think it's Resolute, I think is the law firm that were particularly strong on saying it should be changed. I actually researched that to write about in my book, and from, I think it was 2007, that had looked at the situation and knew it wasn't equitable in 2007, right? And so I found out that they'd done this whole report and how people answered in the questionnaires that they'd sent out, saying, do you think there should be a similar law? And people were shocked to think, well, I thought there was.
Yeah.
People thought, well, I thought there is, and there isn't equitable. But Scotland changed their law, right? So if you live in Scotland, there is some form of thing for cohabiting relationships.
Yeah, they have.
I think it's Australia who also have the cohabiting relationship thing. And Spain, they have a situation where you can register living together with the town hall, but you've got to be, both of you have to be divorced. You've got to prove that you've had a relationship living together and everything.
Yeah.
But in situations of a power and control dynamic, if a woman would to raise, well, let's get this certificate now, because we're living together here in Spain.
Yeah.
Would he say yes or no? Because in my situation, I think he probably would have been a no. We don't need that.
Yeah. Or there'd be some excuses. Yeah.
You don't
excuses. Yeah. Keep tying you up in knots and going, oh yeah, later, we'll do it, and then never do it. And that's the thing, to keep you on the hook and keep you doing as you're told. And that's the awful thing. So are you working on the next book at the moment?
I've started, I've got 5 chapters written, so I've made a list of chapter names so I can go back. But all the way through, I've been documenting things, and I have a notebook that I've put things in. So I can recall events and look up real emails I've sent and things like that, so I know the dates of when things happened, and I can explain the situations better when I'm actually write out the book.
Yeah.
So
the other thing I always think as well is when people are doing things like this, what society doesn't realise is you're constantly going back over all the things that have happened, and it's constantly re-traumatizing because you have to think of all these things. So whether it's going through the court system, whether it's going through social services, whatever it is, you're having to keep going back and like you say, going through the evidence that you have and being able to, and then you're having to remember it all over and over and over again, and that in itself is exhausting.
It is.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm fine with everything and I'm calm, and everything's just going flowing through and I'm okay. But then something, well, I have to write some situation, or I get another email from the court or something happens, and then
and it's back again.
Turns, and you're in your head, and you're like, oh no, not again, and not,
And I think that's when a lot of the time when if you're trying to say to people, there will be days where you're on top of the world and everything's great and you're coping with everything. And then there will be days when something happens, whether it's the letter comes through the door, the phone call, whatever, there'll be something and you're back to square one, but you're not, because you're further along than you were the first time. You just don't maybe realise it sometimes, definitely.
When you look right back and you think of where you were before, and I've got a photograph myself. I did a video back in November 2020 when I discovered the whole of the relationship was a lie, which was a massive another blow.
Well, that in itself is enough for most people, let alone everything else.
It was so weird because I had the telephone number of the woman that he'd had what I thought was a brief affair back in 2018. He told me about it in December 2017, and then it wasn't because he wanted forgiveness and not happening again. It was, he's entitled to have another woman in the UK. Yeah. And so I had to live through a period of like 8 months where he was, every time he went back home to his house, it was like, he's going to be seeing this woman again. It was in my head all the time. I couldn't sleep. I was having panic attacks, and I was like, I was in like trauma then, and grief and trauma.
Yeah.
And it was just a situation, but I can't remember what I was going to say there, and that's probably part of the trauma.
Well, that's it, because there's so much. I mean, you think, you're talking about it over years, and that's another side of it for people, is it's not just a matter of weeks, months, it can be years, it can be decades. And then you're trying to process all that. That doesn't happen overnight. And for most people, the majority of people, it stays with them forever in one form or another. And it might be that you're moving forward every day, but you never really move on, I don't think, from it. I think it's something that you learn to live with.
And I've spoken to women who have been like nearly 20 years in a relationship, but not married. And then it just gone. And, it's hard. And then when they come out of that relationship and the post-separation abuse, because they don't want to give you any finance, they don't want to give you any help, but you've been totally dependent on that person throughout that relationship. And it's normally a case where the man is quite well off and he's probably already got his pensions established and he's earned a lot of money, and he's the one that's said, just go out and get yourself a piece of jewelry, or just go and get another designer handbag, and all of these things, lovely holidays and stuff like that. And then at the end of the relationship, it's like, you're not getting anything.
Yeah.
Anything. And you've devoted like 18, 20 years to a guy who could just basically pick you and use you like a rag doll, pick you up and go in the trash.
Yeah,
because
it's like that you're saying that.
No morals.
No. And it's like the designer handbag or the jewelry, just a piece of property, you're just a thing, rather than actually being treated, because that's the thing, perpetrators don't know how to treat people like human beings, because they don't. Everybody to them is somebody they can manipulate, or somebody that they can control into doing what they want to do. So it is very much, and I think that's another thing that's very hard for victims and survivors to think about, is the fact that they aren't treated as a human being, that actually they may have been treating the perpetrator like a human being, because that's what most normal people would do. But unfortunately, the perpetrator just sees everybody as somebody that they can manipulate, and people, I always say that's like pawns in a chess game, isn't it? They'll just move people around into whatever situation they want to benefit themselves.
I realised that situation that you were just talking about, because one of the designs I created in my t-shirts merch on Amazon was not a possession, not a plaything. I'm a person.
Yes. Yeah.
That's one of that. And the other one was enough is enough. It's under our like narcissist aware collection. Enough is enough. Boundaries begin here was one.
Yeah. That's a good one.
And then one of the other ones is narcissists destroy lives. And I've got all these little hearts floating up. And the domestic abuse ribbon goes, and it's got the domestic abuse ribbon and heart, and then it's got narcissists destroy lives, and all these little hearts floating up on the t-shirt.
Oh, I love that. That's brilliant. Well, I need to be able to put all these links in at the end of the episode, so we'll get all those links on, and for the book as well, so if people want to find it, then they can do. But yeah, I have to say, I mean, I hate saying I've enjoyed the episodes, because I feel you shouldn't enjoy talking about abuse, but what I enjoy is the fact that people feel comfortable enough to talk about things, and that's what it's all about, and that's all we're trying to do, is raise that awareness that it does happen to so many people. It happens all over the world. It doesn't matter where you are, you can't escape it. It is there. But thank you so much. Thank you. It's been amazing.
It gives me an opportunity now to like raise awareness, like I said, because knowing is one thing, but talking about it and raising awareness is the other thing that I'm passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think you'll just keep going, and then you'll have to tell us when you do the next book.
Yes.
Definitely. Oh, well, thank you so much for taking the time this morning, Lorraine. And I hope the weather's gorgeous over there. It's all right here for now, but we'll see how long it lasts. Oh, we did that
It's
for about
scorching
5
up,
minutes.
scorching up.
We have about 5 minutes of that, then it's back to autumn. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Where